This crowd rises to its feet. Vaccaro slammed it home. Garland left wing, free ball. Perfect! Garland went to the lane, lob to Mobley. Pow! And Allen blocked the shot at the rim. Pow! With the left hand and a foul.
Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. The Chase Down is presented by Fubo, the official streaming partner of the Cavs. Watch over 350 channels of live sports and TV, including Bally Sports Ohio, without cable. There's no cost and no commitment. Try for free at FuboTV.com/Cavs. We have a somber edition of the Chase Down Podcast here. The streak is over. The Cavs got a win in Toronto, a place that they haven't won in quite some time, but they end up on the wrong side of a game against the Philadelphia 76ers, who get revenge on the Cavs. The Cavs got one of their best wins of the season shorthanded in Philadelphia in overtime. Despite a furious rally by the Cavs were unable to force overtime in this game. And joining me today is my co-host, Carter Rodriguez. Carter, how you doing, buddy?
Justin, I flipped to our two box early because you said somber. I noticed we're both wearing black. It's like we're at a funeral.
Okay, you know what? Let's dive into it right off the top. We have to, as we often do at the top of the show, we give our little updates, news you might have missed. We do have to start with a somber topic, which is a retirement.
You hate to see a career end, Justin.
You hate to see a career end, but what a run it was. I unfortunately tried to play basketball for the first time since the pandemic, and on my first field goal attempt of the run, I tore my Achilles. I am in a good amount of pain right now, but I am battling through it, but I think my playing days are over. What a run it was, Carter.
It was a heck of a run. You overcame so much, and you have overcome so much in your life, but you've never been able to overcome your legs, which have just constantly failed you. But damn it, we're all rooting for a quick recovery. Hopefully this thing is healed up by the time the playoffs come and you're moving fast. But man, sucks. I'm telling you, the older we get, the more dangerous it is just to exist.
Yeah, it's sad. The worst part is it was a post hook. Like I saw a mismatch, I flashed into the middle of the key, went over my shoulder, and it exploded on the way down, and I immediately knew what it was.
It's crazy. Now, and you kind of said that, like, you now know why people say that they know right away that they tore their Achilles. Like, what was the sensation?
Yeah, first of all, it was loud as hell. It sounded like
wait, hold on. It was actively loud? I thought that was like your internal, like, it felt loud in your head. It literally, like,
Carter, what my experience is what I heard.
Sure. I thought you were being metaphorical, I guess. I don't know.
No, it actually was loud. Like, I heard a snap. It sounded like a gunshot to me. And I just collapsed to the floor. And like the first thing I did was like look around to see if I got kicked in the back of the leg. And
which people do.
Yeah, and then I'm on the ground, and immediately I'm like, it's my Achilles. Like, there's none of that pain of a rolled ankle or anything like that. It's just, I have no strength. I have no function in my foot. And hobbled off the court, but, limped my way to the sideline, and I'm just kind of sitting there. I'm like, yeah, this is Achilles. And of course, it's my right foot. So I'm completely useless for a good 2 months here.
Buddy, I truly am sorry. And really, I can't believe that the Cavaliers couldn't give us a win, a 10th straight win, to kind of at least, make it feel a little better.
Well, no, that's not true. Here's the thing. They gave me the most important win of all, which was the day of that occurring. I was home in time to see the Cavs beat the Raptors and to beat them down. Like, if I'm going to pick one, it's going to be that one, because you know how I feel about the Toronto Raptors. We made it through that game healthy, which is important. That always scares me, and scares me even more now that Kelly Olynyk is on that roster. So, bad things often come in threes. Got the Achilles, feeling a little under the weather right now. Apologies for my voice. And of course, this loss to the Sixers. But in some ways,
thing I'll say, Justin, one thing I'll say, like the Cavs may have taketh with the loss, but they did give. Because if you are a big fan of the Chase Down, really cool thing they just announced. They're doing a Chase Down bobblehead night. which is really exciting. And I can't believe that they like us this much, Justin. But God bless them, and it feels really good to be honored in this sort of way. It says Kelsey brothers. We'll get the text fixed, but I was just really tickled the Cavs would do that for us.
Jason Kelsey is what really drives it home. He looks a lot like you in that one. Thank you for that. I needed the laugh. But honestly, I'm not feeling too bad against after this loss to the Sixers, because on the one hand, I'm kind of sitting here being like, if we're just sitting here being like, man, everything is awesome. I love that because everything is awesome, but I feel like there's a little more to talk about with this loss to the Sixers. I thought the Cavs early on, the tone that they kind of had, it seemed like individually guys were playing hard on the defensive end, but they were doing so in ways to try to jump passing lanes, to try to generate steals, blocks. And there wasn't a lot of continuity with what they were doing defensively as a team. I didn't really see them working on a string like they have throughout this run. And Philadelphia just basically took a mentality of, okay, we're going to capitalize on any of those lapses. We're going to get into the paint. Point of attack defense was not strong for the Cavs tonight, and they got out in transition. I know Philly did shoot well from three, but they only took 26 3-pointers. And I think a large part of that wasn't necessarily the Cavs running them off the line. It's that there were open driving lanes being available. And that was putting Allen and Mobley in tough positions where, they're recovering late and guys are finishing up and around them. Like the amount of times that guys hit shots, and granted, a lot of them were tough over Allen and Mobley tonight, was just astounding to me.
Yeah, and I do want to kind of open by giving Philly some credit. Paul Reed had some really amazing finishes at the rim tonight where I thought he was going to get met at the rim, and I felt like Allen or Mobley were there on time and were giving good contests, and he was just finishing so well, especially in that first half. Obviously, Buddy, who is just kind of a Cavalier killer, he always has good games against us. One of the reasons that trade, if Embiid ends up coming back, is a little scary. Buddy killed us. Oubre killed us. Maxey has always been. This is probably the best they've ever done it on Maxey, and he went 9 of 21 from the field for 22 points. It had 9 assists. I thought the Sixers really came to play. I thought KJ Martin looked like the kind of role player that we were kind of pining for this offseason. He was a guy that was on both of our lists as like a potential trade target for a reason, and he showed all those things. And what I was thinking about, Justin, and I will get to your X's and O's point, but I was just kind of thinking through this, this is normal, and also other teams get to have their miracle wins too. We had a month and a half of a lot of miracle wins, where I have going up against full strength teams and somehow still beating them with a skeleton crew, and sometimes, and it's just kind of a reminder that that every team has those games. This is Philly fans feel tonight the way we felt for the last 2 months. And Donovan Mitchell said post game you're allowed to have blips on the radar where you're not as sharp as you need to be. We just haven't had one of those in 2 months. So it's normal, it's natural, I do think the second half was played quite well by the Cavs. Philly just hit some crazy shots. So, it's one of those things where I don't want to, over-index on things, because it's I know that sometimes you're just going to have games like this, especially with the All-Star break just one game away now. Yeah. But, yeah, I thought Philly played an awesome game. And to your point, yeah, I just think they were trying – I think they were making – they were trying to make flashy plays on defense. They were trying, to your point, they were jumping passing lanes. They weren't playing on a string. And with a team as beat up as this, Maxey's really the only on-ball creator for anyone else most of the time. And really all you need to do against a team like Philly's roster tonight is don't mess up. That needs to be your number one key performance indicator for your defense, is just, did we mess up? Did we go flying in the wrong direction? No, well, we probably held them to 104 points, even if they had a nice game. Cavs gave them a lot of room to get hot, and then they kind of paid the piper in the second half once they started doing the right thing.
Yeah, I think Philly played harder for 40 of the minutes in this game, and they came out with more focus. They recently had a game like this against Denver, the one that Embiid first sat, where they took Denver down the wire, and that was without Tyrese Maxey. And, as you mentioned, Mitchell talked about it after the game. Evan Mobley talked about it after the game, where it's, hey, we lost this game with how we started. We did not come out with the focus and the effort needed. And, the X's and O's, we'll dive into that because that's what we do. But a lot of it does stem from effort, right? It's, all right, I'm letting guys get by me and I'm digging in late, right? Or over helping it as the result of that, the breakdowns that they had. I just thought there was a lot of times where the Cavs just didn't execute to the level that they have defensively throughout this stretch.
Yeah, I mean, look at the Raptors game 2 days ago as a frame of reference where the Cavs were just on a total string. They smothered the Raptors. It was like a workman-like smothering where they had a few splash plays, but most of the time it was just they saw a team that was really hurting for offensive talent and just made every possession a labor for them.
Yeah.
Even with Maxey on the bench, I feel like Philly just didn't have a lot of possessions like that tonight.
Yeah, and these are the games and these are the type of scenarios that I'm going to be really interested in when you look at the last 30 games of the season, because there's going to be times where the Cavs revert to old habits. Even how they started the third quarter, there's a few too many times where guys were standing around, isolation possessions where people were watching. And JB called that quick timeout 3 minutes into the second half. And the Cavs went on a run after that. It's okay. We got to get the movement up. We got to not revert to that kind of stuff. And, just like you talk about how culture gets tested when things aren't going well, the same thing goes for when you're trying to adopt and really drill down a new offensive system and a new philosophy. Because when things aren't going well, especially when you're playing the best teams in the league, it's going to be really easy to revert to, all right, I'll bail us out here. I'm going to, put this on my shoulder. And even the offensive philosophy to start the game, I think they saw Paul Reed at 6'9" being the tallest player on the court, and they really were trying to, force the ball on the inside when that really wasn't there. And Reed was playing such great defense on the interior, and Philly was doing such a good job mucking up those passing lanes.
He's such a fun player. He's the dream role player.
Yeah, honestly, he's about as good as it gets when it comes down to bench bigs. But the philosophy or what you need to do at those points is start to play outside in, right? Yes, you do have the height advantage, but they are really actively trying to take away the paint. They're trying to take away those passing lanes. So I think it was a case where the initial game plan didn't work. They didn't pivot quickly enough or recognize that, and a lot of it does come down to the execution of the guys on the floor. So I was encouraged to see them pull it together at various times, but we need to speed up how long those kind of turnaround times are.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I do think their offensive process is pretty good in this game for the most part. They scored 121, didn't shoot particularly well from three. And again, by the way, they had a chance to win the game, on the last shot of the game. Now, I think they also got a pretty advantageous whistle on a few of those scrambles there at the end, where especially on the 24-second violation, I was like, they fouled the absolute crap out of, I think it was Oubre under the basket. Mm-hmm. But they scored 33, 29, 30, and 29. I don't really think they had a ton of bad stretches on offense. They had 33 assists to only 10 turnovers. I really think they just lost the game on the defensive end of the ball. There were some possessions where they were trying to force it over Paul, especially early. But I think they adjusted very quickly. Obviously Donovan was just impeccable in this game. He had 36 on just 20 field goal attempts. He had 17 free throw attempts, which, only 2 less than the entire 76ers team. So I don't know. I don't know. I still feel like they are. I think they're starting to figure out the offense. I felt like to start the season that starting 5 was just a little gunky. And there have been some times since those two have come back that it's felt a little gunky again, but I think they're starting to really consistently generate clean looks on that end. Like, I think they're like Darius had his best game since he's returned, at least as a scorer and a playmaker. He had 21 and 9 with no turnovers, which is, the kind of stuff you really ask of him. Just obviously, had a 3 get wiped off the board and then missed the game winner, and all of a sudden it just doesn't feel so good. But I feel like the offense is coming together.
I agree with that. I think they're really starting to click. I think the way that you see, one set flow into another, it's becoming sharper overall. I think the second half, the Cavs, if the Cavs came out in the first half with the effort they did in the second half, and that was just like the tone they set for the game, I don't think Philly kind of builds up the confidence and has the type of game that they did. Because they really gain positive momentum, and once you give a team hope, once they're sticking around, that makes things so much tougher. Every single time the Cavs were trying to come back within this game, right, take it from 9 points down to 4, it seemed like even though Philly didn't hit a lot of threes, it was always those moments that they were hitting kind of those momentum threes, and that just feels so much different if the Cavs are up rather than the Sixers trailing, right? Like, they may not even attempt those shots. But I agree. Like, I think this was probably the best Garland game yet since he's been back. You look at the last 2 games in particular, and you got 17 assists, 2 turnovers. In the entire time he's been back, he's only had 16 turnovers. So that's just at 2 per game out of these 8 games. That's the Darius that we're used to seeing, right? Like, a very, very high assist to turnover ratio. I know I've said this before, but out of players with a usage rate over 25 and an assist percentage over 30%, the only player that had a better assist to turnover ratio in the league was Jokic last year, right? Like, this is what we're used to with Darius, and even him getting up 8 threes, I think that's positive. It hasn't looked like he's had his legs. This was the closest I've seen to it. You mentioned it before we started recording, but he just didn't have his legs under him.
I don't even know I just don't know if his feet were right. It did not leave his hands well at all.
It didn't seem like a leg weakness thing, but it seemed like the footwork just wasn't there on that kind of final attempt. I don't know if it was rushing because of the clock or whatever the case may be. But if Darius is rounding into form like this, that bodes very well. Like, that third quarter run, he assisted or scored almost every single one of those buckets. I think he and Mitchell are flowing well off of one another. And I think there's a lot of signs for encouragement, but this is just another one of those reminders that, as much as we like to talk strength of schedule and kind of write in wins and losses ahead of time, you have to take every single game seriously, because every team is full pros. Every team can beat you on the right night, especially if shooting variance isn't going your way. This wasn't even a case of that, though. Like, I think this really did come down to effort, especially when it came to the point of attack defense. And the other thing I'll mention while we're on the defensive subject is, the absence of Dean Wade. I think that made things a little bit tougher, because those second unit minutes, especially for a Philly team that's playing small as a result of the injuries, not having Wade out there basically meant that you're putting Niang in space a little more than you probably would in this matchup, given the personnel that Philly had available. And I feel like the Sixers really cashed in those minutes.
Yeah, it was a rough game for Niang on both ends of the floor. Obviously, 0 points, 2 personal fouls, 0 of 4, -7. Like, it just Philly was just flying into every possession. They were really, I feel like they were playing a frenetic pace on the offensive side of the ball, and with the Cavs often just not in perfect position, it led to Niang having to do a lot of like picking up campaign and semi-transition, and like it just like they couldn't downshift very well. Like, you almost want Niang there. Like I feel like he thrives almost against teams that are big as well, that are playing big, and then he downshifts, pulls their bigs out of the paint, and creates some extra space. Like, it's hard when they're just playing like, just fast. They weren't playing like a lot of these. They weren't playing like almost anyone who was even like 6'7", 6'8", except like a KJ Martin. So, like, I think it was just one of those games that's a tough matchup for Niang, and like you might have seen Dean get a lot more run in this game if he had been available. So, I continue to think like, yeah, they're running the 10-man rotation, but I think it's just going to be a any given Sunday kind of thing for minutes at the backup four. I think there's going to be some nights where Niang and Wade split them down the middle. I think there's going to be some nights where Niang plays 25 and Wade plays 10. And I think there's going to be some nights where the inverse happens. And I think there's about 25 to 30 minutes there at the backup four. And it's just going to be a matter of kind of where you're going to play them. But like, we've been talking so much recently about how the team just is a Swiss Army knife as of late, where, no matter who you got, they kind of got a lineup for that. Yeah. Like, this was one of the nights where they didn't have a lineup for that. Wade, and again, Wade is just, he's so important for this team's optionality, which is so wild to say for your 8th, 9th, 10th man, but he really is.
It's also like the 4th year in a row that we've been saying
that.
I
know. That's what I'm saying. Like, they can't quit him. Like, no matter who their personnel is, you kind of end up finding yourself going, man, it would be nice to have Dean available to solve this specific problem we're having. So yeah, I mean, I think it's as simple as that. Niang not only had a rough game, he had a rough matchup while having a rough game, and they didn't have Wade to turn to, which meant that they did play a little bit more of the double big. This is one of the first games we saw those guys, the starters close the game. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think a couple of the times too, like when you have a 2-point loss, it's easy to focus in on every little thing. And I apologize because I'm stealing your point, but we talked about the 2 techs that the Cavs drew, Niang and Max Strus. Frustration in the moment in a close game like that. That's the type of stuff that can burn you, and that's the double-edged sword, right? Like, we talk about it sometimes with Donovan, his ability to rise to the occasion and bail you out of moments. Sometimes that can lead to stagnation. When you have passionate guys like Max Strus and George Niang, that gives the Cavs a lift that they need. There's been so many times when they've given them that energy that you really need. But in those moments, getting those texts, and both of them, I think, being on them disputing calls that were correct, that's a little tough. And again, I don't think any one thing lost it. I think the effort to start the game and not locking in soon enough made it tough. But sometimes these are the lessons you need to learn in the regular season, because that's the type of stuff you can point to when you see this. Like, when you start to see the signs of it, especially with a team that communicates like this one does, that holds each other accountable, I think you can start to draw on these experiences and be like, hey, I can tell that we don't have our foot on the gas, and we're easing off a little bit, and we're playing down to whatever lineup or team that you're playing. I think that's stuff that you can draw on.
I'm rarely disappointed in technical fouls. Like, I understand guys are passionate. Bang bang calls happen. It's really frustrating. You're hyper competitive. I was disappointed in the technicals tonight. There's a degree of like, hey, our best player has 17 free throw attempts for the game, and there was no late game fouling or anything like that. Other than, I think he did get two of those on when Philly fouled up 3, which remains an affront to the basketball gods, Justin. But like, I don't feel like the Cavs were getting an abundantly rough whistle. It just felt like those are some spots like, hey, I know the game isn't going your way, but like, you can't like take that out. So I was just disappointed. I felt like it wasn't the time to go that hard. And in a game they lose by 2, they have 2 technical fouls. Like, I'm not drawing a straight line, because that would be very stupid. And maybe we're not talking about this. Actually, we're definitely not talking about this. If Darius just hits that shot, we'd be celebrating, a 10th consecutive win and how resilient this team was. But like, it does matter, and like whether we're being ideologically inconsistent, like, we're not perfect, but like in this, on a game like this, I was like, that they both happened at rough times in the flow of the game, and I felt like it was at least worth bringing up.
Yeah, it was impossible to shake Philly all night, right? Like, you just could not generate space in terms of the score. They just found ways to stay connected. And you know what? Know who helps us stay connected, unlike my Achilles? Zoom. Support for this podcast and the following message comes from Zoom. 500,000 businesses connect using Zoom, a single platform for phone, chat, workspaces, events, apps, and video. Zoom enables real-time collaboration for teams around the globe. Zoom, how the world connects. Know who else has been connecting lately, Carter? Evan Mobley from deep. I'm getting excited about his three-point stroke. I think the form looks good. I'm starting to. I love, history doesn't always repeat, but it rhymes. I always look at that Isaac Okoro, January 2022, the end of January. That's when the three-point shots started coming around. That's when you started feeling better every time it goes up. I love the shots that Isaac took in this game, by the way. I think he's one of the few people in this game that I just didn't have a problem with anything he did on the court. Nope. I thought the effort was high. I love the shot attempts he took. The first contested one that he splashed in the corner, I love to see. I thought, the way that he dove for loose balls, got steals and all that. Isaac was great. But I'm starting to get to the point with Mobley where it's just different than earlier in the year, where sometimes there was that hitch and you were kind of like wondering whether or not it was going to connect properly. I'm not worrying about that with Evan Mobley now. Like, the form looks good. The shot looks like it has a chance. He went 1 of 4 against Toronto, but really it was 4 of 5, or sorry, not 4 or 5. That would have been impressive. 2 of 5, because there was the travel that waved that one off. Splashed one home tonight, and I just like the fact that he's taking them.
Yeah, it does feel like, he had a bit of a backslide this year in terms of 3-point volume, only taking maybe one every other game. And they certainly weren't going in. I don't know how much he was able to work on his jumper while he was rehabbing. That's one thing that's like, I never know with like a knee surgery, like was it low contact? Like, he couldn't be running, but he could be shooting. He talked about working on his shot, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, he did. He said that he worked on heightening the release point so that it was higher up in the stroke, which, I mean, it certainly looks like that. But like, to make a change on your jumper and like, forget like rehabbing an injury, but just like a 6-week window, that's insane to me.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we'll see if it bears out, but I do like that he's taking them. Because I think he's always been someone who we should see taking them. And I want to see him take middies as well. I want to see him keep working on that in-between game. Like, I think right now, of the two Cavs bigs, I think right now Jared Allen has the better short roll game as a scorer. I think his floater game is really strong. The mid-ranger game has been really strong. And, like, that was kind of our hope for Evan when he came in, was that would be a consistent weapon for him. And if there's one thing into last year, beginning of this year, that we talked about that I was a little disappointed about, even though I really, I'm not one of these doomers who are like, Evan hasn't gotten better. I think there's a lot of things Evan has really grown at this year. One thing I was concerned about was how much I felt like he was starting to leave the short touch floaters, push shots, all that stuff behind. Felt like it was kind of dunks and layups and post-ups or nothing. Yeah. And like, so I'm really enjoying seeing him take those shots, because if you just get someone to take one extra step out towards you, that just opens up the toolkit so much for him. Like, I think it'll be a long time before he's meaningfully improving the gravity for everyone else. Like, you have to, we've seen Isaac shoot 37-38% for, 2 years now, and he still isn't getting guarded a ton. So it takes a long time and a lot of volume to have like true blue gravity. But like, as long as the points per possession stay high, as long as he makes, takes some and makes defenses think, I think it goes a long way.
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, obviously my mind goes to the play where Scotty Barnes waved off Evan Mobley standing wide open at the 3-point line and Mobley splashed it, right? Like I think that's important. I quickly looked up when you were talking about Allen being more effective as the roll man. He is averaging 0.2 points per possession more than Mobley as a roll man, 1.16. Not great, honestly, but I kind of expect those pick and roll numbers to go up now that Darius is back full time. You look at like his playmaking. I think Darius is all the way back when it comes to playmaking. The way that he was, slashing through the paint and passing guys open. He had a beautiful play against Toronto where he basically faked the pass midair to the wing and then splashed it to Karras, who was wide open and took advantage of that. So it's really, really exciting to see that aspect come back. And I think
I need the Bigs' hands on Darius's passes to come all the way back. they've fumbled honestly, a couple really nice passes, and I know that Darius goes for some tight windows, but I think some of these guys are just having to readjust to having a guy who makes those passes because his timing is really hard. I joke that they need to be back. These are hard catches, but I know that Mobley and Jared are capable of making them, and if they're able to squeeze the orange on some of those interior passes and go straight up as opposed to bobbling it or having bringing it down, man, it's going to get so much easier for them. I think once they get reaccustomed to the rhythm of playing with him, it's going to be really, really valuable.
Yeah, if you look at the 16 turnovers that Darius had, I wouldn't be surprised if 4 or 5 of those are, those type of situations where it's an entry pass and it gets bobbled and just never really gained possession. But I think it was Greg Buckner. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but it was a halftime quote where he was basically talking to Serena and saying that, Darius sees the game at such a quicker level than everybody else that it does take some time to adjust to that. It takes time to adjust to what he can see as a passer and the opportunities that he's able to create. So it makes sense that it's going to need time to gel. My hope, of course, is that, the Cavs learn from this game and come out with the appropriate level of seriousness against Chicago and take care of that. We got a little bit of a gift, looking at the scoreboard tonight with Houston beating the Knicks. That certainly helps from a loss column perspective. Bucks are going to be on the Cavs tail the rest of the way when it comes to the 2-3. I do feel the need. Yeah, go ahead.
If I can just say, I do think looking at what's kind of happened to the Knicks over the last week or so, I think they've lost 4 of their last 6 or something like that. They've lost 3 in a row now, and they're really beat up. And yeah. I think watching the Knicks, who are a hard-nosed, tough, no excuses team, they lose a lot of their top end talent, and they're having a hard time fielding a competitive roster right now. They're fighting, but they're not winning. And I think it just gives, and that's no slight to the Knicks. That's what's supposed to happen when you lose, 2, 3 of your top 4 or 5 guys. So the fact that the Cavs have such a sterling record, down 2 of their top 3 and oftentimes 3 of their top 4 over these last 2 months, again, I just want to keep reminding folks of how uncommon this stretch has been. I know it's a bummer that they didn't win tonight, and a loss at full strength against a beat up team sucks, but they've more than earned the goodwill by winning a lot of these games where a lot of teams and fan bases reasonably go, well, what are you gonna do? And what the Cavs did was build a roster that is 10-11 deep. What the Cavs did was win 17 out of 18 games. And that's why they are where they are in the standings, because when they got beat up, they just kept winning anyway.
Yeah, and looking at, for the Knicks, I think it's tough too, because to get shorthanded at a time when you're trying to integrate new pieces like Bogdanovich, like Alec Burks, that makes things a lot harder too. Just glancing at the box score tonight, Josh Hart plays 42 minutes, Brunson plays 38, DiVincenzo plays 40. All of the starters are basically positive when it comes to plus minus in a 2-point loss. Then you got Bogdanovich at minus 13, right? Integrating a new piece and integrating a piece that's primarily offensive orientated without the defensive support of an OG Anunoby, Mitchell Robinson, Isaiah Hartenstein, who's out as well. Like all of that makes things so much more difficult. So what the Cavs were able to accomplish over that run where they were shorthanded, I think is really impressive. But also like, one of the things that's going to be a feather in their cap and an advantage post All-Star break here is that they're not trying to integrate a totally brand new piece. Like that is going to be tough for a lot of these teams that did make moves. But it is really important. Like I was saying with the Chicago game coming up, Milwaukee is going to be on the Cavs' tail the rest of the season. Like that is going to be a fight the rest of the way. They're going to have to continue playing at a high level. And I'm appreciative of that because they don't have a lot of marquee matchups the rest of the way. Like we have the game against the Knicks, we have the game against the Celtics, but outside of that, especially with Embiid missing time, there's not a lot of like the true litmus test games. So the test for the Cavs is going to be the schedule itself. It's going to be, as Donovan Mitchell said post game, not getting bored with success and getting lazy and, trying to cut some corners. You have to bring it every single night. And the Chicago game is extra important because it matters for the tiebreaker against the Bucks because they split the season series. Cavs just have to win 3 more against the Central Division, and there's only 5 games left. So you drop that one, all of a sudden, oh my goodness, like those remaining games against Indiana are really damn important, right? So I think rebounding from this and treating Wednesday with the seriousness that they need to is going to be important. As tempting as it will be to kind of pack it in and enjoy some time off with this All-Star break.
Yeah, and the tiebreaker stuff matters, man. Obviously the Cavs loss tonight makes it look even further away, but I've been looking at that 1 seed to be like, okay, if they stay this hot and Boston loses a few games here and there, and the Cavs beat Boston in their last matchup, maybe they can draw even. But then you forget Boston already has the tiebreaker. So, they're actually, even if the Cavs are 5.5 games back, you can add another half game to that because Boston has the inherent tiebreaker, and that's what Cleveland really needs to do. Yeah, they're 2 losses up on Milwaukee in the loss column. Like, that's really, really, really important to, and Milwaukee gets a huge win at home against Denver tonight. So, like, as much as it's great that the Knicks lost and did the Cavs a favor, the Cavs also kind of had the inverse where they probably thought they had a good chance of gaining ground on Milwaukee tonight. Instead, they lose it. So, yeah, you got to take care of business in your divisional games. It's a very, divisions aren't as important as they used to be in basketball, and they were never that important in the first place. But boy, does it matter right now. So gotta beat the Bulls heading into the All-Star break. And I think the team also, there's just something about going into the break with a win. Winning 18 of 20 to go into the break. That just, I don't know, it just feels right.
Yeah, and at that point, you're 1 game away from being 20 games over 500. And the Cavs didn't reach that point until their 50th win last season. That's when they got to 20 games over 500. Getting, that much closer, going into the All-Star break with a win, I think that would be great because they've got another test on the other side of the break. Like right off the bat, you have a back-to-back. You're starting the post-All-Star break stretch with a travel back-to-back against Orlando and Philadelphia. So Cleveland is going to have an opportunity to get some revenge on the Sixers, who will still be shorthanded. But I think, when you have an all-star caliber player like Tyrese Maxey and a bunch of good role players, that's a team that you're going to have to take seriously, especially on the road in a tough place to play in Philadelphia.
Yeah, it will be a back-to-back for Philly as well. They play the Knicks on Thursday and then host the Cavs on Friday, but it's a double home back-to-back. So obviously a much lower stress one. And man, I'll tell you what, this Sixers schedule is brutal to come out of the break. Versus Miami, versus Knicks, versus Cavs, versus Bucks, versus Celtics.
You know what?
I'm sorry, at Celtics. So 4 home games, 1 road game, but woof, that's tough.
I need to apologize. I need to apologize to you. I need to apologize to our listeners. sometimes, like, you got to be careful what you wish for, because sometimes you get it. On the last podcast, we said, burn sage, do whatever you need to do to make sure that Philly gets enough wins to avoid the play-in, so you're not playing them in the first round of the playoffs. And
monkey paw curled, my friend.
The monkey paw curled, and this was a step in that direction, just not the way that I wanted it. So that, as you said, that's going to be a really tough stretch for them. I'm interested to see how the Cavs look going into the break. Hopefully they can go on a strong run, because I think the Cavs really proving that this stretch, it wasn't a fluke, continuing to dominate the teams that you should beat, and getting some good wins along the way. That's going to be their best path to, get someone like Donovan Mitchell the MVP conversation that he deserves. He needs consideration for them. That JB deserves consideration for Coach of the Year. If the Cavs end up with the second or third best record in the league, man, with all the adversity they went through, I get that OKC has had a great season, but some of that is Chet's added to the fold. Shea's actually healthy for a full season, and Jalen Williams is great, right? That's part of the natural progression for them. But I think in terms of managing a roster that hasn't had a lot of continuity through the year, being able to adjust on the fly, reintegrate these pieces, and everything that this coaching staff has done, JB and everyone else on that bench, I think, deserves the love and credit that you get from winning Coach of the Year.
I couldn't agree more. I think I'm not gonna get grumpy about award snubs and about lack of award attention, but I do think when you look at the MVP race and you look at the Coach of the Year race, I just don't see how Donovan and JB don't get thrown into the ring, because the stats are great, the metrics are great, the win total is great. I don't expect Mitchell to win MVP. I think the league is just too insane at the very top end right now for that. But for Coach of the Year, I mean, talk about what are your standards for Coach of the Year? It's exceed expectations. Cavs are on pace to do that. Overcome adversity. Cavs have already done that. How you have a team that's connected and together and all swimming in the same direction. The Cavs have done that. Run good offense. Cavs have done that. Run great defense. The Cavs have done that. I just feel like Coach of the Year is always going to be one of the more crowded award ballots, but kind of feels like the kind of year that JB could has a real shot at being able to win it. And I hope he gets a chance, and hope people are paying close attention to what's going on over here.
Yeah, I totally agree. He's been great. You've been great as well, Carter. Thank you for carrying me as I deal with, as I said, a little bit of a cold and a fair amount of pain. We will wrap it up here. We'll have one more podcast for you guys before the All-Star break. I'm going to be glued to my TV a lot over the next couple of weeks. So I might even no, I won't. I was going to say maybe I'll even do a third rewatch of games instead of my standard one rewatch, watching every game twice. Yeah, I'm not doing that. Let's be real here. I might just need to find some shows to binge and be lazy for a while. But big thanks to everyone that tuned in live on YouTube. Make sure you like and subscribe. Click the notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you're listening via podcast and you want to support us, leave us a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of Chase Down's exclusive Discord chat, send a screenshot of the review to chasedownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Until next time, go Cavs.